You're always on standby, ready to support, listen, and respond. Whether it's during your lunch break, in the middle of the night, or when you're running on empty, you believe that being constantly available is a sign of kindness and value. But here's the harsh truth. The more available you are, the more you risk being taken for granted. The easier you are to reach, the harder it becomes to command respect. Over time, you stop being yourself, and instead, you become just a convenient stop in someone else's life. When you begin to step back, it's not giving up, it's the start of something new. Self-control. The Stoics called this the ultimate power, mastering your reactions, guarding your inner peace, and living with intention. Stoicism, the philosophy that helped people endure slavery, exile, and war, doesn't teach you to please everyone. It teaches you how to stand firm in the world, unaffected by external forces. And when you start pulling back, you'll realize the world doesn't crumble as you feared. It shifts in ways you can now command. Today, I'll show you how to begin this transformation. Number 1. Why you always make yourself available. There's a hard truth that most people don't want to admit. You're always available, not because you genuinely care or want to help, but because you feel like you have to. In your mind, there's an automatic reaction. A message comes in, you reply. Someone asks for something, you say yes. Any social cue, and you're there instantly. But the deeper issue is this: you rarely stop to ask yourself, is this truly worth my presence? Stoic philosophy from thousands of years ago pointed out this blind spot. Epictetus once said, "What disturbs people is not things but their judgments about things." We're not overwhelmed by the events themselves, but by the way we judge them. You respond to messages even when you're drained, not because they're urgent, but because a thought flashes in your mind. If I don't reply, I'm a bad person. You agree to help even when you don't want to because you've internalized the belief that if I say no, I'll be judged. And just like that, you keep reacting to your initial impressions without ever pausing to examine them. The Stoics called these first impressions phantasia, immediate sensations that have not yet been filtered through reason. It's when you see someone's disappointed glance and instantly think you've done something wrong. It's when a notification pings and you assume it needs your attention right now. But the truth is, most of what you react to is beyond your control and has nothing to do with your actual worth. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be cold. It teaches you to know what deserves your attention and what doesn't. The difference between someone who is truly free and someone who is always available lies in that discernment. But that discernment isn't natural. It's not instinctive. It's a skill, one that most of us were never taught. From a young age, you might have heard things like, "A good kid always listens," or "Being kind means always helping others," or "You should know how to behave properly." These phrases sound like lessons in being a good person, but over time, they subtly plant the belief that your value depends on how willing you are to serve others. So you learn to show up when called, to say yes when you mean no, to smile even when your mind is overwhelmed, because that's what earns you praise, love, and acceptance. Slowly, without realizing it, you lose the ability to choose. You stop living and start reacting. Jean-Paul Sartre once said that we're not born with a fixed identity. We define ourselves through our actions. But this freedom comes with a significant cost. If you have the power to choose, then you are also responsible for everything in your life. Too many people opt for the safer path, living as though they have no choice at all, like machines programmed to please. The cost? Your freedom, your identity, your inner peace. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. You become the dependable one, the responsible one, the helpful one. But in doing so, you start drifting away from who you really are. You smile at parties while feeling empty inside. You say, "It's fine," when you're barely holding it together. Each time you tighten the noose around your neck so subtly, you don't even realize you're suffocating. Others notice it before you do. You become their emotional lifeboat. When they're sad, they call you. When they're anxious, they turn to you. They know you'll respond. They know you'll show up. They know you won't say no. At first, that might feel like purpose, but eventually you'll realize you're not being appreciated. You're being used. Not physically, but emotionally. You're no longer a person with depth, limits, and value. You become a dumping ground for everyone else's emotions. So ask yourself, who are you prioritizing, and who, including yourself, is being left behind? Unconscious reaction doesn't just drain your energy, it strips away your agency, the very foundation. To reclaim that agency, start small. When someone messages you, don't reply right away. Not to punish them, but to test how long your mind can sit in silence. Notice the urge to respond and resist it. That's not just discipline, it's proof that you still have a choice. And if you're worried you'll be left behind or judged, remember this. Your worth isn't measured by how often you show up, but by the intention behind your presence. People who are always available are easy to replace, but someone who shows up with clarity, purpose, and grounded energy, that's rare. Freedom begins in the pause. Pause. Mute the notifications. Slow down before you respond. Ask yourself, does this really need me right now? You might be surprised when you stop being constantly available. The world doesn't fall apart, it falls into place. And that right there is the first step to understanding the most valuable resource you lose every time you react without thinking, your mental energy. In the next part, we'll dive directly into that concept and learn how to protect it like a true Stoic. Understand mental energy. Number 2, understand mental energy. Have you ever felt completely drained, even though you didn't do anything too taxing that day? Maybe you didn't hike a mountain, give a big presentation, or confront anyone. But your mind has been running a non-stop marathon. Every unread message, every small talk, every polite reply, each tiny interaction quietly chips away at your mental energy. This invisible fuel, your psychological energy, is what determines whether you stay focused, clear-headed, and at peace. In Stoic philosophy, it's the foundation for self-control, reason, and living with virtue. Yet the paradox is that the more you react, the more you lose touch with yourself. The Stoics compared the mind to a garden. It can flourish or be overrun with weeds, depending on how you nurture it. If you don't guard it carefully, don't choose what stays and what goes, mental clutter, aimless worry, and reactive emotions will grow wild. And the real danger isn't just their presence, it's what they push out. The seeds you should be growing: clarity, calm, and inner direction. When you constantly react to shocking news, careless comments, meaningless drama, it's like leaving your garden gate wide open and standing helpless as the trash piles in. The gate is unlocked, no guard in sight, and you're left sighing in a space that no longer feels yours. Nothing meaningful can grow in soil already taken up by things that don't belong. Carl Jung referred to psychological energy as libido, not just desire, but the life force that powers your inner world. According to Jung, this energy can flow or it can get blocked. When you become a mirror for others' emotions, absorbing their anger, anxiety, and pressure, you lose your own current. You stop being you. You become a reaction. And of course, you get tired. Not because you're weak, but because you forgot this simple truth: you don't have to react. Imagine your mental energy as a water pouch. Each unnecessary reaction pokes a tiny hole, not big but constant. By the end of the day, you're wondering why you feel uninspired, why your creativity is gone, because the water's leaked out. What's worse is that we often prioritize the worst drainers. Drama-filled relationships, defensive conversations, these drain us while the things that truly deserve our energy go ignored. Learning, thinking, creating. Real freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you feel like. It comes from choosing what not to do. When you stop reacting to things that don't truly matter, the energy trapped in emotional chaos begins to return to you. Jung said that only by pulling energy away from the scattered, false self can real growth begin, what he called individuation. The Stoics said something similar. True strength doesn't come from loud reactions, but from quiet stillness, like a fortress that stands untouched by the storm. Try this. Turn off your notifications for just 2 hours. Not because you're drowning in work, but because you're choosing to keep that energy for yourself. If someone messages you during that time, they'll learn that you're not always instantly reachable. And more importantly, when you're not constantly available, others are forced to manage their own emotional waves, and you keep your inner calm. This isn't avoidance, it's quiet strength. It says, I protect what fuels me. Each morning, you can ask one simple question: who will I allow to touch my energy today? Picture your mind as a quiet room with a door. No one comes in unless you open it. And if someone shows up pounding with chaos, demands, or guilt, you still have the right not to answer, because that room, that's where you think, create, rest, and heal. Guarding it isn't selfish, it's wise. It's what gives a mother the strength to nurture, a leader the fire to lead, and any soul the silence to breathe. No one can thrive while being pulled in every direction. Practicing non-reaction isn't about being passive, it's about reclaiming sovereignty. You decide what's worth your energy, and you let the rest go. Now take a quiet look at your life. Where is your energy going that no longer deserves it? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and reply. And if this message resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe. Let's keep evolving together, not to make life more comfortable, but to make it more meaningful. Welcome to part 3, what you lose by being too available. The truth is, the more available you are, the easier it is for people to overlook your value. That might sting, but it's something worth acknowledging. Not because you're not worthy, but because you're always around. Too quick, too easy, too reachable. In this world, rarity often equals worth. You don't find diamonds in every display case, and a person who doesn't constantly wave their availability is often admired, not ignored. But this idea isn't just about perception. It affects your sense of self too. Constant accessibility isn't always compassion. Often it's a fast track to self-neglect. That quick reply you send when you're mentally drained, that phone call you answer even though you're falling apart. Each of these moments can slowly disconnect you from your own center. The Stoics taught long ago that when you keep bending to other people's needs and schedules, you give away your autonomy. You're not deciding, you're just reacting. And that means you're not really living. You're operating on someone else's terms. And most of the time, this doesn't happen because people mean to drain you. They just get used to your yes. They rely on you because you allow it. They don't sense your burnout because you never show it. They assume you're okay because you never say otherwise. But even the strongest currents hit a wall. Even oceans have a tide that pulls back. And when you finally disappear for a moment, the response, or lack of one, might surprise you. You expect shock, you expect them to notice, but often they don't. That's the heartbreak. And maybe, just maybe, that story sounds like yours, or who you used to be. Thomas knows it well. He worked in customer service, on call all day, every day. People called him the guy who never says no. He wore that label like a badge of honor until his body started falling apart. No obvious cause, just creeping insomnia, waves of anxiety, and a constant sense of exhaustion. He felt like a machine, switched on when someone needed him, shut off when they didn't. Then one day he missed a call from a colleague. It rang again and again. On the fourth attempt, instead of asking if he was okay, the person sent a text. "Why are you being weird today?" That sentence hit him like a punch. It was never about him, just his usefulness. That realization broke something open. That was the moment Thomas started stepping back. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't quit or vanish. He simply turned off notifications for 1 hour each morning. Not to be productive, not to catch up on reading, just to sit and breathe. When people were used to him responding instantly, that hour of silence made them pause. And in that quiet, Thomas discovered something he hadn't felt in years. Not approval from others, but control over himself. A subtle, powerful shift. For once he felt like he was steering his own life, not being pulled along by everyone else's demands. You can try this too. Start small. Don't respond to that next message immediately. Not to ignore someone, but to check in with yourself. Can you sit with silence in a world that's addicted to noise? Set aside 2 short windows in your day where you're offline, unless it's truly urgent. At first, you'll feel uneasy, then peaceful, and eventually, clear. You don't have to always be available to be worthy. Maybe what scares you is the idea of fading away if you stop rescuing everyone. But remember what the Bible says, do not give dogs what is holy. Do not throw your pearls to swine. Not everyone deserves your full presence. When you make yourself too available, you lose your sacredness. You're no longer a treasure. You become a tool, picked up and tossed aside. Have you ever asked yourself how many people in your life love you versus how many love the way you show up for them? If you stopped giving so much, your time, your help, your energy, would you still matter to them in the same way? These aren't questions to hurt you. They're meant to remind you that your value isn't based on how many people depend on you. It's rooted in whether you still show up for yourself. When you take a step back, it doesn't mean you're vanishing. It means you're finally arriving fully, consciously, as your true self. And with that intentional space comes something powerful: your emotional freedom. People will have no choice but to adjust to your boundaries because your presence is no longer a guarantee. And that's when the shift begins. That's when the right people start to find you. The ones who aren't just drawn to your availability, but are drawn to your essence, the part of you you've now protected and held sacred. This is how you learn that silence is more than stillness. It's power. It's not about ignoring the world. It's about recalibrating your energy and shifting your presence from being passive to intentional. So let's explore this deeper. Number 4, how silence becomes your strength. When you make yourself constantly available, always replying, always showing up for every minor need, you stop living your own timeline. You become a shadow version of yourself, always online, waiting to be needed and fading quietly when it's your own needs calling. But something incredible happens the moment you pause, stay quiet, and resist the urge to instantly respond. The world keeps moving. People who depended on you adapt. Some relationships adjust, others dissolve. But most importantly, you begin to reawaken. You breathe deeper. You return to your natural rhythm, not someone else's. The Stoics understood this well. Silence was never the absence of life. It's not passivity, it's intention. Silence is a choice, a tool, even a quiet kind of power that can redefine your interactions. Not everyone deserves your energy, and even fewer are entitled to your immediate attention. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When you're always reacting, you're not truly seeing. You lose the ability to step back, reflect, and guide your life from within. Declining to be constantly available is how you begin to regain control. And nothing signals that transformation more than silence. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, though not a Stoic, echoed this in his writings. He said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he doesn't love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free." For him, freedom wasn't the ability to speak, but the liberation from needing to. He believed most people live under a shared illusion, dependent on others to define who they are. That's why silence frightens so many. Without others' reactions, they don't know who they are. But those who embrace that quiet, who face it head-on, begin to live in truth. In a world full of noise, the one who chooses silence becomes the rare observer, the one still thinking clearly. The reality is, the more reachable you are, the more your energy gets depleted. The more you react, the less your actions are truly yours. And the faster you speak, the less depth your thoughts hold. But when you pause, intentionally, you're making a statement. You're saying, "I'm not here out of obligation. I'm here out of choice." Choosing silence isn't avoidance. It's authorship. Not replying right away is a deliberate decision, an act of clarity, not avoidance. It's about recognizing what deserves your attention and what doesn't. When others can't predict your reactions, they lose the ability to control them. You stop being the go-to fixer. You stop offering your emotional bandwidth to cushion someone else's chaos. Instead, you begin living with the truth that your energy is precious, and not everyone is entitled to it. A simple habit to start this journey is something I call the silent buffer. When someone triggers you, through a passive jab, a dismissive message, or a sharp comment, pause. Don't respond. Ask yourself, am I reacting from confidence or from fear of being misunderstood? If it's fear, stay quiet. That pause becomes protection. It's how silence becomes your strength. It's important to know the line between running away and stepping back. Avoidance is reactive. It comes from overwhelm and makes problems fester. You shut down, but never heal. Intentional withdrawal, on the other hand, is strategy. Like a wise commander retreating not to surrender, but to gather strength. The Stoics understood this with precision. They didn't speak to gain approval. They didn't react to fit in. They stayed still when stillness was stronger. Their lives weren't shaped by the crowd, but by their values, rooted, quiet, and unshaken. If you're still watching, it says something powerful about you. It shows presence. It shows patience. Leave a like as a quiet signal to yourself that you're done living reactively. And stay tuned. The next chapters will take you deeper into your own transformation, how to protect your time, shift the dynamics in your relationships, and finally, build a life that reflects who you really are. Number 5. Reclaim your inner worth. When you're constantly available, you're sending a subtle message to the world that nothing about you is protected or sacred. Your time, energy, and attention become open access, like public property, always on standby for someone else's benefit. And before you know it, you end up in situations, relationships, and conversations that don't deserve the value you bring. The journey back to your self-worth doesn't begin by trying to show others how important you are. It begins when you pause and ask, how much of my life is spent reacting to others instead of living in alignment with myself? Take a breath. Be honest. Have you ever answered a message the moment your phone buzzed, even when you were emotionally drained? Taken a call that could have waited just to avoid seeming rude? Felt guilty for saying no when you had nothing left to give? These aren't just small acts of people-pleasing. They're signs of slow self-abandonment. As Epictetus wrote, if someone handed your body to a stranger, you'd be outraged. Yet you give your mind to anyone who comes along, letting them disturb your peace. That reflection still hits deep today. Are you letting others trample your inner peace simply because you've forgotten how to protect it? Choosing to shift from constant availability to intentional presence isn't selfish, it's powerful. Your mind is your temple. If anyone can barge in without warning, it loses its sanctity. Saying no isn't rejection, it's a respectful boundary. It says, come back when you're offering something equal in value. Every time you protect your time and choose silence with intention, you refill your internal well. You reclaim strength. You rediscover clarity. Because even the deepest wells run dry if they're constantly emptied and never replenished. It runs dry. That's why it's essential to protect the deepest, clearest parts of yourself. You don't need to constantly be present to be appreciated. You don't have to keep saying yes to prove your worth. In fact, your selective presence can become your greatest strength. The less available you are, the more value your presence holds. People start noticing your absence, not because you disappeared, but because your presence once carried quiet weight. If you're always responding, always present, always agreeing, you become part of the background, expected and unnoticed. But when you pull back intentionally, people begin to ask themselves, do I deserve this presence? This isn't a switch you flip overnight. Begin by paying attention to small moments. The next time a message pops up, pause for just 3 seconds. Ask yourself, is this what I want, or am I just reacting out of habit? Before you say yes to another event or favor, check in with yourself. Am I being valued here? And if you're not sure, take a small step back. That distance isn't rejection. It's a quiet recalibration. Try living just one day where your responses aren't immediate, where your time isn't up for grabs. Don't be the emotional caretaker for everyone else. Engage only in conversations that feel authentic, that reflect the real you. Even if no one checks in, you won't feel alone. You'll feel anchored because the relationship with yourself is slowly strengthening. Over time, you'll find something beautiful happening. You'll stop needing to explain yourself. No more defending why you didn't respond to that late-night message. No more apologizing for choosing solitude over yet another obligation. Your silence will speak for you, and it will say everything. I'm choosing myself. And from that choice, confidence starts to grow. Not from being praised, but from the peace that comes with no longer needing outside validation. When you defend your space, you breathe differently. Mornings feel lighter without endless notifications. Evenings no longer come with guilt for being unavailable. You pick up a book just because it brings you joy, not because it's on someone's list. You connect with those who uplift you, not those who constantly take. And in those gentle, quiet moments, you realize what's been missing all along. Yourself. Once you understand that your worth isn't something others give you, but something you discover within, everything shifts. You start asking a new question. Which people actually deserve my time and energy? That's when you turn the page to a stronger chapter, one where your standards are set not by fear of being alone, but by love for your own peace. Number 6, redefine relationship standards. Not everyone you meet is meant to walk your full journey. The true risk lies in never pausing to define what you truly need in a relationship. Too often, we just let things unfold, maintain connections out of habit, and get emotionally exhausted because we never established healthy boundaries. Each time you say yes to something that drains you, a late-night call when you're wiped out, a favor that stretches you thin, a meetup you didn't even want, you're telling yourself that someone else's comfort is more important than your own peace. This is exactly where Stoicism offers clarity. No one can disturb your calm unless you allow it. It's time to rewrite your standards, not because you've become colder or distant, but because you're finally choosing to honor your truth. The first new standard should be this: closeness means nothing if it comes at the cost of your boundaries. You don't show up because you feel obligated anymore. You show up because you want to. And when you say no, it's not an attack on anyone else. It's a sign that you finally accepted your own capacity. You're not a machine. You get tired. You need stillness. That's not selfishness. It's wisdom. And it's time to redefine what real closeness even means. We've grown up believing it's measured by constant interaction, by how often we talk, how long we've known someone, or the pain we've survived together. But daily communication means nothing if you still feel unseen. Closeness isn't about how many messages you send. It's about how deeply you connect. There are people you only meet occasionally, yet their presence fills you, centers you, and leaves you feeling more whole. These aren't the loudest relationships, but they're the ones that hold you steady, like a quiet harbor in a storm. And when it comes to relationships, don't skip the hard question: why are you still in this? The answer isn't always clear. Sometimes you stick around not because you care deeply, but because you're scared. Scared of silence, of what you'll hear when the chatter stops. Maybe you're staying because you've been labeled the kind one, the one who listens, who never says no, who's always there. But let this be clear: kindness doesn't mean surrendering your boundaries. Just because someone calls you generous doesn't mean they value you. And if you're keeping the connection alive only to avoid someone else's discomfort, that discomfort becomes yours alone to bear. So try this. After each interaction, sit quietly. Let your body speak. If you feel calm, unburdened, like a gentle weight has lifted, that's your signal. But if you leave feeling tense, drained, like you're dragging something unseen, then it's time to pause and ask yourself, why are you holding on to this relationship? Is it out of habit, guilt, or fear? The most honest answers are often uncomfortable, but they are the keys to unlocking a life where you can truly be yourself. Aristotle once said, there are 3 types of friendships: those based on utility, those based on pleasure, and those based on virtue. The first 2 are circumstantial. Only the third, where both people aim for goodness, truly lasts. But to reach that level of connection, you must be willing to let go of relationships that are sustained merely by familiarity, history, or politeness. Sometimes the simple truth is that you're no longer aligned, and that's enough reason to step away. No blame, no drama, just honesty. Here's a standard you can apply today. Limit how many people get access to your inner energy. Picture your inner circle like a small, exclusive space with only 5 seats. If someone new comes in, someone else has to step out. This isn't cold, it's protective. The more people you allow into your quiet, the harder it becomes to keep that space sacred. And here's the twist. When you stop being constantly available, those who truly value you will respect you more. You're no longer just an option, you become an intentional presence. You don't react mindlessly, you respond thoughtfully. You don't show up by default, you show up with purpose. You're not loved because you're easygoing, you're respected because you now understand your worth. Stop asking, what do they need from me? And start asking, are they worth what I'm giving? That simple shift can completely change the foundation of your relationships. If you're ready to redefine your connections based on honesty and inner peace, drop a comment saying, "Protect my peace," to mark the moment you chose to live for yourself, not by turning away from the world, but by finally turning back to you. Number 7. What changes when you step back? When you begin to step back, the world doesn't stay still, it vibrates. Messages slow down, and the way people used to call your name turns into an awkward silence. The late-night requests for advice fade away. The surprise phone calls to vent their frustrations disappear. And soon, you start to hear murmurs, the complaints. You've changed, why aren't you replying? But people aren't reacting to your personal growth, they're reacting to the loss of access. When you stop being available all the time, they're forced to face themselves. That's when everything starts to shift. Not everyone will be comfortable with your quiet withdrawal. Those who relied on your constant presence, whether it was to vent, solve their problems, or simply feel significant to someone, will feel hurt. But that pain isn't caused by your actions. It's their discomfort at having to face emotions they've long avoided. Some will call you selfish. Others will sulk. But that's not your responsibility. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about what other people are doing unless it affects the common good." You can either trade your peace away by responding to every call, or you can learn to protect your boundaries like a guardian of your mind. When you stop reacting to every prompt, a silence falls, and that silence disturbs people. They were used to pushing a button and having you show up. When that button stops working, your silence becomes a mirror. But they don't see you in it. Instead, they see themselves, their anxiety, their fear of abandonment, or their need for control that they've long ignored. A friend once shared that when she stopped rescuing her boyfriend, every time he spiraled, he got angry. Not because she did anything wrong, but because for the first time, he had to take ownership of his own emotional mess. When you step back, you don't disappear. Instead, you give others the chance to confront what they've been avoiding. Silence doesn't make you fade into the background. It makes you stand out. Someone who's always predictable and accessible eventually becomes background noise, convenient but not valued. But when you become intentional with your presence, people pause. They start to reassess who you really are. Absence, when rooted in clarity, not resentment, carries the weight of independence. You no longer react just to preserve a connection. You choose to exist not because someone needs you, but because it feels right. That's what makes you rare. But the real shift doesn't begin with others. It starts within you. The old habit of constantly reacting, like a door with no lock, gives way to intentional pauses. Mornings no longer start by reaching for your phone. Conversations no longer begin with, "What should I do?" You learn to let things pass without feeling the need to hold on to them. Instead of trying to fix every uncomfortable feeling around you, you simply listen without absorbing. Someone once said, "I used to jump in and fix everything when someone was upset. Now I just ask, do you want me to listen or do you want help?" That's maturity. That's Stoicism in action. And here's the beautiful twist. When you step back, people don't leave. Only the ones who never truly saw you will do. The parasitic connections where you were treated like a free emotional resource begin to fade away. That's not a loss, it's a clearing. It creates space for something better. Relationships that respect your boundaries. People who don't need you to do anything, but just be. That's the true value of your silence. Not because you're trying to be distant, but because you've stopped devaluing yourself. Have you ever wondered if you disappeared from a conversation for a few days? Would anyone really notice something was missing? If not, maybe you've been in the wrong room all along. Stillness isn't absence. It's a form of power that doesn't require a spotlight. When you're no longer the green light always on, you start to glow from within. Not to be seen, but to see yourself more clearly. And the best part is, when you become less available, you become more trustworthy. Not because you're good at hiding, but because you know exactly when to show up. So next time someone says you've changed, smile. They're right, but they haven't seen the full story yet. This is just the beginning. We've just walked through 7 powerful lessons about letting go of always being available, and how this small shift can spark profound changes in your life. You now understand why you've been in reaction mode and how your mental energy has been quietly draining away. You've seen the hidden cost of being too accommodating and discovered the quiet strength that comes from intentional silence. Together, we've re-examined your inner values, raised the bar for your relationships, and witnessed the transformation that begins when you choose to step back. Not to disappear, but to show up with timing, intention, and integrity. You weren't born to always be available to everyone. You were born to live with focus, with boundaries, and with depth. Keep that in mind. When you stop being the person everyone can reach at any time, you begin to transform into the person not everyone can easily access. If this video resonated with you, inspired you, or offered a fresh perspective and you haven't liked it yet, now's the time. Leave a comment and share your thoughts, or tell us about a moment when stepping back made a difference in your life. Don't hesitate to share this video with someone you care about, someone who might need to hear this message right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. More thoughtful, meaningful, and inspiring content is on the way. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon.